Ireland sells itself as a land of welcome. Open roads, green fields, ruins you can wander into like you're stepping into a postcard. But here's the part most tourists never hear out loud. There are places in Ireland that locals don't just avoid. They tiptoe around them. They drive the long way. They won't picnic there. They won't cut a certain tree. They won't build on a certain patch of land, even if it would make life easier. And if you ask why, you won't always get a straight answer. Sometimes you'll get a shrug. Sometimes a laugh. Sometimes someone will lower their voice and say, you wouldn't be touching that. Because in Ireland, forbidden doesn't always mean there's a fence and a warning sign. Sometimes it means a story. Sometimes it means respect. And sometimes, it means people learn the hard way that certain places don't like being disturbed. So today, we're going into Ireland's ancient, forbidden places. The spots wrapped in old rules, older fears, and memories that don't fade. And I'm not here to mock any of it. We're separating history from hype, but we're also going to be honest about why these places still have power. And by the end of this video, you'll understand something most visitors miss. You don't have to believe in the supernatural to understand why locals won't mess with certain ground. Let's start with the simplest truth. Ireland is old. Not old like a museum. Old like layers. One world built on top of another, with names and meanings that survived invasions, famine, and modern life. And when you have layers like that, you get rules. Not laws written on paper. Rules written into the landscape. The first category of forbidden places is the one people whisper about the most, places connected to the other world. Fairy places. Now, if you're not Irish, you might hear fairies and picture something cute and harmless. That's not the Irish version. In Irish tradition, their good people aren't Disney characters. They are ancient. They are proud. They are not interested in human convenience. And if you break their rules, the punishment isn't a dramatic movie scene. It's the kind of slow, grinding bad luck that makes you wonder if you've offended something you can't see. The most famous don't touch sites are ringforts, also called raths. To the archaeologist, a ringfort is usually an early medieval farmstead. A raised circular enclosure, sometimes with banks and ditches, where families lived centuries ago. To many locals, it's something else. A fairy fort. A place you leave alone. And what's fascinating is how practical the avoidance can look. You'll hear stories of farmers plowing a field and steering the tractor around the ringfort like it's a rock they can't move. Developers who just won't build there. People who say, you can do what you want, but I wouldn't. Why? Because the stories are everywhere. A man who tried to level a rath and suddenly his cattle started failing. A family who built too close and nothing in the house worked properly, animals sick, children always unwell, jobs falling through, one problem after another like the place was pushing them out. Some people tell these stories like jokes. Others say them like warnings. And here's the part that makes it more than superstition. Even people who don't believe in fairies will still avoid interfering with ringforts. Because why take the risk? If an entire community believes a place is sensitive, that belief becomes a kind of real force. It shapes decisions. It shapes behavior. It keeps certain places preserved longer than any government protection. And ringforts aren't just avoided because of unseen consequences. They are also avoided because they are literally ancient homes. There may be burials. There may be artifacts. There may be human history that deserves respect. So, forbidden becomes a mix, folklore plus quiet dignity. Now, if ringforts are the big obvious don't build their places, the lone hawthorn tree is the everyday version of the same idea. You'll see them sometimes standing alone in a field, as if the entire landscape moved around it. In Irish tradition, certain hawthorns, especially lone hawthorns, are connected to the other world. A fairy tree. A threshold. And there are countless stories about people cutting one down and regretting it. The regret isn't always a lightning bolt. It's the kind of chain reaction that makes you think, we shouldn't have done that. A vehicle breakdown right after. A sudden run of accidents. A business deal collapsing. Sickness in animals. Again, maybe coincidence. But that's the point, the stories don't need scientific proof to have power. They work like a social warning system. And what's amazing is how far communities will go to avoid disturbing a fairy tree. You'll hear about roads being rerouted, construction plans adjusted, a single tree standing like a stubborn old guard, forcing modern life to bend around it. And if you've ever wondered why that would happen in a practical country, the answer is simple. Some things are easier to leave alone than to fight. Not because everyone is terrified, but because these traditions are part of how people feel they belong to the land. Now, there's another forbidden idea that shows up again and again: fairy paths. The belief is that the other world has routes, straight lines between certain mounds or forts, and you don't block them. You don't build across them. You don't interfere. And whether you believe in that or not, think about what the idea does. It creates a reason to respect open space. It creates an explanation for why a house might be built slightly oddly, or why a door might be placed in a way that makes no sense to an outsider. It also creates a sense that the land has a pattern humans shouldn't disrupt. And that's one of the biggest reasons forbidden places survive in Ireland. Because forbidden makes people protect what could easily be destroyed. Now, let's move into a different kind of forbidden. Sacred ground. This isn't about fear. This is about reverence. Ireland is full of holy wells, monastic ruins, and ancient churches, and many of them have a strange feeling, even if you're not religious. Not because the place is spooky, but because you can sense that people have been coming there with serious intentions for a very long time. A holy well might look like a quiet spring or a small stone enclosure. But for centuries, people visited these wells to pray, to seek healing, to make vows, to ask for protection. Some wells have paten days, traditional gatherings tied to a saint or a local custom, often with rituals that go back further than anyone can trace. And in communities like that, there are rules. Not written rules. Unspoken rules. Don't make noise like it's a party spot. Don't take things. Don't climb on the stones. Don't treat it like a prop for content. Because for locals, it's not a cool location. It's a living place. And when a place is living in the mind of a community, disrespect feels like a violation. The same goes for monastic ruins and graveyards. Tourists see a ruined church as romantic. Locals often see it as a resting place. Some of these sites have burials stretching back hundreds of years. Generations. Names that still exist in the area. Family lines that never left. So while you might walk in thinking you're exploring history, a local might walk in thinking, this is where my people are. And that creates avoidance too. Not because people are scared to go there, but because they approach differently. Some won't go at certain times. Some won't bring children to play there. Some won't treat it casually. Forbidden here means, don't cross the line from curiosity into disrespect. Now let's talk about the third layer, maybe the most haunting one. Places avoided because of what happened there. Not folklore. Not fairies. Not saints. Memory. Ireland's landscape carries trauma. And you can feel it in certain places, even without a sign. Old famine roads. Workhouse sites. Unmarked ground. Places where people suffered, died, or disappeared into history. Sometimes locals avoid these areas not because they think they are cursed, but because the pain attached to them is heavy. It's not a place you bring a picnic. It's not a place you make jokes. It's not content. It's a scar. And what's powerful is that the land often holds these memories quietly. No big monuments. No dramatic storytelling. Just a knowing in the community. And that's why some places feel forbidden in a way that's hard to explain to outsiders. Because outsiders can arrive with curiosity. Locals carry inheritance. Now add one more ingredient: danger. Ireland's coast is breathtaking, and it kills people. Cliffs, blowholes, sea caves, tide traps, places that look like a dream in photos and turn deadly in seconds. And this is where folklore becomes something practical again. In many coastal areas, there are stories about certain rocks, certain coves, certain stretches of shore that take people. Sometimes those stories are told like superstition. But very often they are simply a cultural way of saying, do not go there unless you know what you're doing. Their curse is the Atlantic. Their warning is a story that sticks in your mind better than a safety brochure ever could. So when you hear, locals avoid that spot, it might not be because of the supernatural at all. It might be because locals know exactly what happens when the tide turns. Now, if you're wondering what ties all these forbidden places together, the answer is surprisingly simple. Ireland has 5 main reasons people avoid places. First, respect. Sacred places, burial grounds, holy wells, ruins, people avoid casual behavior there because the place still matters. Second, community memory. A location connected to tragedy carries weight. People avoid it the way you avoid a painful topic, quietly, without needing to explain. Third, risk. Cliffs, unstable ruins, hidden holes, tides. Locals avoid danger because they've seen what it does. Fourth, property and boundaries. A lot of forbidden is actually don't trespass. Farmers, families, long-standing local rules. If you're not from the area, you may not know where the invisible lines are. And fifth, folklore as social glue. This is the one outsiders underestimate. Stories don't just entertain. They regulate behavior. A fairy fort story protects an archaeological site. A fairy tree story protects a landmark. Our don't go there at night story protects you from breaking your neck on uneven ground. Our don't disrespect the well story protects a sacred tradition. So when people laugh at Irish folklore, they often miss the brilliance of it. It's a cultural operating system. It tells you how to behave when there's no signpost, no police, no modern explanation. And here's the most interesting part: you don't need to believe in fairies to follow fairy lore. Because these forbidden places still do something real. They shape choices. They shape roads. They shape what gets preserved and what gets destroyed. They shape how people treat the land. And if you ever visit Ireland, the best way to understand this is not to look for spooky thrills. It's to look for the quiet signals. A ringfort left untouched in a perfectly ploughed field. A lone hawthorn standing like it owns the place. A holy well with small offerings left respectfully. A ruin that feels less like a tourist stop and more like a hush. Those are the places where Ireland's old rules are still alive. And if you want a simple way to be respectful, here's the checklist. Don't trespass. Don't take anything, not stones, not water, not souvenirs. Don't climb on ruins that are crumbling. Don't treat graves like a backdrop. Don't chase viral shots near cliffs or tides. And most importantly, if a local tells you, "We don't do that here," don't argue. That's not just superstition. That's centuries speaking. Now, before we end, I want to ask you something. What do you think makes a place forbidden? Is it fear of the unseen? Or is it simply the way a community protects what matters? Because Ireland's forbidden places aren't really about keeping you out. They are about reminding you that the land isn't empty. It's full. Full of history, full of belief, full of grief, full of rules that survived because they worked. So if you want a part 2 where we go into specific named sites and the stories around them, without turning them into cheap horror, tell me in the comments. And also tell me this. If you stood in front of a lone hawthorn tree and the locals begged you not to cut it down, would you listen? If you enjoyed this video, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next episode gets even deeper into the places Ireland doesn't advertise, but never forgets.